that mean we're on? I'm waiting for her to say recording started. Okay, I think we're on. So good morning, Sukh.
Yes,
how are you doing?
It did.
It's on.
Thank you, Modi. How are you?
Yeah, cool. Okay, cool. So we just had a little chat, haven't we? And I said, hang on a minute, let me press the button because we've already gone into the subject. And the subject, I thought it might be a good title, is religion man-made or is it God's creation? And we just started talking about all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of the reason I wanted to talk to you, because of kind of, is it your belief system? I mean, we've come together through this what's going on in the last 4 years. You know, our paths have crossed many times, and I have a huge amount of respect for you and what you say and what you do. But then I just threw a question at you the other day, and I said, well, let's talk about it, and that's it. So what do you say to that question there?
Oh, it's a good question. So firstly, I sort of, all of the, what I refer to as the faiths of the world, if you like, they, for me, are based on a fundamental principle of something people would refer to as maybe natural law or divine law, God's law, universal law, different names for it. And at the highest level, that is really the unwritten rule set that we as sentient beings, regardless of which faith or no faith potentially that people are following or inclined towards. And the unwritten rule set there is that people generally understand if a right or wrong has been done to them, right? So even people, if you are like psychopaths or sociopaths, even they know if a wrong has been done to them, even if they are desensitized to the fact that they may do wrong to somebody else. And the idea of that in practice is, if we think about it, we take a 2 or 3 year old child and we put them on one side and sort of give them some toys and some sweets, and we let them be content and start to play and just be at peace. And then we sort of go along and just grab all that stuff and walk off. That sense of injustice will be expressed probably through a tantrum of some form and tears. I'm sure most people will know the kind of experience that you'd be left with. So, but what that really is that I was here just enjoying myself, doing my thing, enjoying my peace, you know, and that git where the long beards come over and taken my stuff and walked off, you know, and they're going to let you know that. That at a real basic level is a sort of description of, or an example of natural law. There's a chap called Mark Passio on YouTube, and he's got a talk on it, 7 hours 46 minutes. It's actually probably one of the best 7 hours 46 minutes of video on the internet, whether you can digest it in one go or whether you watch it in snippets. But I really, really do recommend it to people. It bridges that gap between sort of spiritual and practical, you know, going through the logical constructs of how the sort of the spiritual, the sort of faith-based stuff starts to break down. Because for me, faith is the original message that, you know, whether it's Yahshua Christ or Muhammad or Abraham, Moses, 10 Sikh gurus, whoever it is that are expressing it, that the natural law is what they're expressing through their own genius and their own divinity in each situation. And often that situation was also had a backdrop of tyranny. So obviously in Christ's time it was Roman Empire, particularly the Western Roman Empire based from the Vatican. And then, you know, in the Sikh Guru's time, you had the Mughal Empire. So a lot of them came about because it was natural law, which is a system of fairness and justice, like we just said, versus a tyrannical force that is the opposite of that natural law, unnatural law, or you could say man's law, as Mark Passio refers to it. But we'll call it natural law, maybe unnatural law, just to give it a nice opposite. So if we have a think now, the way that I sort of try and phrase it, it's interesting that you use the word religion. Okay, so for me, I think religion is man-made. But I believe that faith is divinity. So faith for me is the natural law expression that the messengers and the messiahs, however you want to refer to them, have put down in the books, the Vedas, the Torah, the Quran, the Gospels, the Ard Granth, etc. But because they come along and obviously they're empowering the people and teaching them about love and abundance and transparency and strength and all the rest of it and sovereignty, obviously that goes against what the tyrants want their subjects to be learning. Right, so they couldn't defeat the messages, so they recreated what I refer to as religion, which looks like, sounds like, smells like, tastes like, yeah, faith, but it's subverted.
Mm.
And so you've taken natural law, and by mirroring the examples and literalizing them, you've gone from sophisticated, nuanced ideology, theology, philosophy, that kind of stuff, and ideas and concepts, into literalized, hard, man-made, rule-based stuff. So you've gone from the law into the legal. Okay.
Mm.
And so that's really good. As an example, what do I mean by that? How did they subvert that as a mirror? An example for that I try and use is the hare and the tortoise. Okay, so if we take the hare and the tortoise as an example, I think most people understand that Aesop's fable, hare and the tortoise. And the moral of that story, when the hare and the tortoise have had a race, is that slow and steady wins the day, right? And the tortoise got there first, basically. And obviously a little bit of ego and complacency on the hare's part as well, no doubt. Right? But if you sort of took that today and somebody wanted to invert that, so rather than say an imam or a sheikh like Imran Hussein or a rabbi like Rabbi David Yisraeli Weiss or somebody like that who are genuinely enlightened souls, and you go into the world of kind of extremist Islam or Zionist Judaism, which is a completely different, inverted version of that, then they would be trying to explain that actually, my dearly beloved congregation, it was not a race that the hares and the tortoises had, but a battle and a war. And my hares here today, what you must realize is those tortoises disgraced our ancestors' honor. And they took from us our righteous position as the fastest creatures on earth. And therefore, we must destroy and kill all these people and regain the land that is Rabbitsville or Haresville or whatever you want to call it, right? And so they've literalized and lost the nuance and meaning of the fable and the story or the parable or however it is written. Mm. And they've literalized it and thus created division out of it. Okay, so faith itself was a direct and transparent expression of natural law in those different settings that we talked about. And then for me, the religion is the inverted version of that, which is literalized and interpreted without the higher consciousness, because those don't have the higher consciousness can't interpret it with that. They can only look on at envy with those who can interpret that and do have that love flowing. But then in order to try and subvert that, they have to try and mimic it and fool as many people as possible so that they can then use the fallacy of common appeal and common belief to say, look, most people believe this and most people are following this, therefore it must be right. Mm. Right, majority mob rule, democracy and elections, and the false interpretation of the word democracy being nationwide elections falls into that as well, majority mob rule. Because when you own all the media and you've got the biggest amount of influence, it's easy to take the crowd with you until they realize the truth, obviously, as they're starting to now. But so is religion man-made? The religion stuff is, but the original message of faith, which the books are truly about, and which those, and there are enlightened people, like I mentioned earlier, and those for me are the sort of natural law messages. And the Constitution.
That was a very good answer, very long answer, very good answer. It's, you know what you're talking about. Why does this happen then? Who are the people that takes this extremism into play? Why?
I mean, if you have a look at the world and the experience that we have, it's all based on a duality and a contrast, really. You know, why do our taste buds work? Because we taste the difference between sweet and salty, bitter and sour. You've got different opposites, left and right, light and dark, all the rest of it. And our five senses they sense this contrast in the mathematics of matter, you know, whether something's hard and soft, everything's number. The material world is number. At the end of the day, number in four formats: arithmetic, harmonics, geometry, and astronology, which is like astronomy and astrology were one subject back in the ancient Greek times. They weren't split out now because there was a respect for the fact that the celestial objects have a mathematical impact on us through electromagnetics, and it's undeniable because that's how the tides operate, and that's why Sacred Feminine drops its egg once a month, right? So you know, if you're going to deny entirely the fact that the celestial objects have an impact on the water of the planet and the energies of the planet, then to be honest, you've got to really be quite ignorant of the reality of life. So you know, that's not to say that all the stuff that's written in the newspapers that they can tell you exactly which boyfriend you're going to get next month and stuff is real. I'm not suggesting that, but you know, the truth of that science has been lost as a result, and some of that frivolous stuff is there to create a distraction, really, and take you away from the core truth of the maths and the science behind it. Yeah. But in law terms, the law is based on faith, and the legal is based on a religion. Why? Because the law states in England that you can do whatever you want to do, anything you like, providing you don't cause any other sentient being any loss, harm, or injury. And the legal is the opposite of that. The legal says you can't do anything unless you have permission to do it. Therefore, you need a permit or a license or approval. Okay, things like that. And you have to register and stuff like that. So unless it's stated, you can't do it. So one is the definition of slavery. Unless the master gives you permission, you cannot do it. However, the law and faith is there to empower you, it's there to set you free. You can do whatever you want as long as you don't hurt someone else. And that is obviously in line with whatever creative force you believe put us here. It's given us a sense of free will. Right, and so that free will and the sort of expression of that free will through trade and moving around and seeing your loved ones and worshipping how you want and doing all those things that you're free to do as long as you're not oppressing or hurting anyone else. That's what the law is there to protect. The legal is there to stop corporations from doing things they shouldn't do. The legal is there for the non-living entities, right? And the law is there for living entities, which is funny then if you look at the same pattern that faith was written for living men and women almost, and the religion was there to create an army of zombies that they could control. You know, ultimately that's what it was. I mean, they couldn't defeat Yahshua's message, so they had to assimilate it into the Roman Empire, and they created Roman Catholicism.
Right. Okay. So, because I was going to say, when we talk about there, I mean, and the masters, who put the masters in place? Who are the masters and who put them there? If all these
masters as in Muhammad, Abraham, Jesus, all the rest of them.
Well, no, I think it's just what you were saying. You know, if it's like if we're enslaved and we can't do anything until our masters tell us what to do.
Well, the masters are whoever you give the power to. So if you believe in the legal system and you answer to the government, then your masters are the government. You know, if you believe in a cult leader and you answer to the cult leader, then your master's the cult leader. But if you only believe in the one creator of all that is, was, and ever will be, as the Freemasons like to refer to as the grand architect of the universe, then that's your master, and then you won't answer to any other authority but your conscience, which is the only guide between you and that creative force, I suppose.
But many of us have put these governments or these other bodies, these governing bodies, into place. We've given up our power. Is that what you're saying? We've given our power away to not the divine, but somebody in between, the middleman.
Well, I suppose people choose. Sorry, go on.
No, those the masters that we put in place. It allows us to do this, to go out, to stay in, you know, to put things on our faces, to put things in our bodies. All these rules and regulations. Have we given people the right to tell us what to do? Is it our fault?
No. Well, it's always the individual's fault for losing control over their own life and their own mind. You can't blame anyone else for that. That's part of sovereignty. Even if they've taken you and they're torturing you and put you in jail, it's still up to you to resist that mentally. You might not be able to beat them up and do what you want to do, but you've still got to maintain your sense of free will as far as you can in terms of
Mm.
not submitting to it. You know, that's obviously probably easier said than done, but
Yeah.
you know, it's an extreme example of that. Sorry,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you've answered it really. I mean, it's talking about, you know, the masters, and if we put them in place, it's our choice. But,
yeah, sorry,
but I mean, just going
just
back.
just
I
just
just want to go
there
back to
was a little bit.
the. So you go, you speak. I'll be quiet.
Yeah, only just because I remembered what I was going to say, because you've repeated the question. While I was in my head, I forget you. People can choose to have a master or not at different points in the day. Yeah, someone, for example, you might go out and feel you're sovereign, but then at some point, people might feel like they're having to use a driving license or a passport to get to a rally and come back again. But then that's because people think the government are an authority. The government is not an authority. The government is an administrative function. They have no control over you. They're there only to help coordinate the realm. That's it. They have no authority and no control. They can't tell you what to do and what not to. They think they can because it's been taken over by psychopathic lunatics, right? And that's the problem with the system as it is, with money driving everything, as it has done since the Battle of Waterloo. You know, when this sort of economic system started, which is the current religion, if you like, of the sort of world run through the banking system. It's been completely twisted because people choose money over morality and economy over ethics. You know, people build a family, but then they'll spend loads of time away from their family to earn maybe 50% more money or 100% more money.
Yeah.
But you're not spending the time with that family for that 8 or 10 years. And so you miss maybe the informative years of the kids' lives and bringing them up and stuff. So there's loads of different balance. And I'm not saying what's right or wrong. I'm just giving examples of that. And so different people will have to do what's right or what they believe is right for them. But you're choosing a different master at any given point. The great saints themselves, or the spiritual leaders themselves, the avatars that landed, or Yeshua, the gurus, the rest of it, they never move their face. They never turn their face from their one master, the one father, the one creator, however they oneness. More Vedic is more of a oneness. It's not an external entity, but we are part of that one absolute creation and being. Creator and creation are one. They're not separate in Vedic scripture. I think it's that in all. For me, it's like that in all the scriptures when I read them. But
yeah,
I know a lot more mainstream Abrahamic side is that God is external to the one self rather than internal. Battery's going to run out. Hang on a second. Plug it in.
okay.
Yeah, cool. Right. So, but in that context, but still, it's within that total infinite being type paradigm, if you like, that's set. Sorry.
So go a bigger sort of jumping here, because I don't want to go too far off the subject of, you know, is religion man-made? There's several, well, there's many religions. I don't know if there's hundreds or not. There's a lot of religions, and there's main ones, which are quite obvious. But when we were just chatting the other day, I threw the big question, and it was really about India and Islam, and that's kind of where I wanted to direct this conversation. So can you talk about that?
Okay, they're two huge topics in and of themselves. But India, firstly, all of the countries whose borders were drawn World War II or World War I, World War II onwards. As far as I'm concerned, they're firstly not natural nations. India is what the banking elite would love and have tried to do with Europe, right, against the will of the patriots. They managed to do it in India because empire had obviously managed to conquer the individual kingdoms and fiefdoms and natural regions that existed. India is actually, each state is a country in its own right. You know, they were kingdoms that are separate, and there is a massive self-determination fight going on in India at the moment, where all the states, you know, whether it's Punjab, Kashmir, Tamil, they're all fighting for independence, because India, people see India only based on the sort of marketing of it being this big romantic place, and it's complete nonsense. It's one of the most genocidal, racist places on the planet, you know, and people don't realize the treatment of the minorities in India is shocking. You know, Gandhi was and the information's on the internet, was operating, just as were the rest of them that were educated at Oxford and Cambridge. They were operating on behalf of MI5 and MI6. And they knew exactly how they were going to cut the border in India and Pakistan way before they sent the delegation over there to do it. You know, they didn't. They're far too astute. They are far too strategic to leave these things to a last-minute accident. You know, a bit like COVID-19 was a last-minute accident because poor Mr. Chi got hungry and bit into a raw bat at a wet market in China. Right? It's like, come on, people. You know. So it's a similar sort of scenario where they used sort of incompetence to cover a much more nefarious agenda. So India as a whole is not a natural region. And that's why, for me, over the next 5-10 years, it will get broken down, as will the EU. And we're seeing that with the farmers' protests. That's the first point. The land has stood up. The custodians of the land are the farmers. And so we're seeing that because of the situation in India at the moment, people don't realize that the people that empire left in place in all of these countries were the most nefarious criminal elements of those nations, who were put in place as management agents on behalf of empire. At the end of World War II, the global order moved from a imperial military control to a debt-based control with a united military force, really NATO are the sort of battering ram for anyone that tries to break the banking world order of the Western Roman Empire, right? AKA Zionist, Sabbatean Frankists, whatever you want to call it. And really, that's been an ongoing battle for some time. Now, India has been a key part of that, and Islam in India was obviously went across during the Ottoman Empire. So during the Mughal empires and stuff, they sort of went and established there, and Punjab was a key battle region for that. But the Muslims are definitely getting the brunt of it in India as well, because they ruled over for so many years. The Hindutva, RSRS, which is extremist. People don't realize that there are extremist Hindu wings and factions, right? But the Hindutva is the equivalent of like a Hindu KKK, if you like. Right? And they operate across India, and they very much terrorize, beat, rape the minorities and stuff like that. And the sort of things you see in Palestine goes on in India. It just doesn't get reported over there because they've got total control in a different way. And Bill Gates, obviously we know from the vaccine test they did there, injured tens of thousands of children with portfolio, just like they have done with many of the vaccine damage from COVID-19 vaccine.
Yeah.
And did something similar in Africa as well. So yeah, but these things get hidden by the media, and India's quite good at hiding that stuff. But otherwise, Islam itself, just like the other books of natural law, they have the true side, and then they have the shadow side. And the shadow side is that side which is flipped and mirrored and turned into this, what we call the religion, if you like, where I'm using faith to mean the original message and religion to mean a subverted version. I accept some people use religion differently, but that's the sort of taxonomy I'm using for this interview, if you like.
But it's, so if you've got, I mean, I did jump into a big subject because it is all linked. Everything that's going on is linked, and I guess because we're in the West, we just talk about what's going on in the West or in America or in Australia, and not so much in eastern parts of the world. But it is very, very connected. And another big question, if we are under divine law and there is just one God who we answer to, whatever you might call that God, how come we do have so many religions? And how come when you look at India, it was divided? Just, you've got the Hindus, you've got the Sikhs, you've got the Muslims. What's happened there, and why do we not get on so well if there is one God with various names?
If you forget people who operate from conscience, those people who genuinely believe in the Creator, rather than dogmatically sticking to a religion, they all get on. There's no issue. In fact, it's a good point. Like, if we take the Holy Land as an example, okay, and by Holy Land, I'm referring to that which I put in brackets, Palestine / Israel, using chronological order, right? So, in modern history anyway, right? So, the Holy Land, which is how I refer to it, because that's rightly how Sheikh Imran Hussein and the rest of them refer to it, there was no problem there. The three faiths were all living in harmony there. If you speak to Sheikh Imran Hussein and you listen to Rabbi David Yisraeli Weissner, there's no disagreement. because the holy books don't disagree with each other. Okay, the holy books agree with each other. There's on Sheikh Imran's YouTube channel, you can have a look. He explains the current situation of the holy war. He explains
Shaking Man.
It's Sheikh Imran Hussein.
Shaking Man. Okay.
Okay, and he explains that, and in English on there, and I've met him. He's blessed soul. His understanding of Quran it was such an honor to meet someone of that standing.
Yeah,
and it'd be great to be able to meet as rabbis as well. But I've only seen them on the videos so far. They'll go through that actually in the Muslim texts. It states that the righteous custodians of the Holy Land. It would be interesting to do a poll at this point and see who the viewers think that the Quran stroke Hadith, this Islamic ideology, states are the true custodians of the Holy Land. Because it states that the righteous Jews are the true custodians of the Holy Land. That makes you wonder, well, why is there a fight going on? Well, the key point in that is it states that it's the righteous Jews, not just anyone. So who are the righteous Jews then? The interesting thing I find is that when you put the three texts together and you read all of them, you get a much better picture of what's going on. Not because they have differences in opinion, but because actually they're saying the same thing at different points in time. And if we look in Revelation, and it states there, and I'm paraphrasing it, so forgive me, Christian brothers and sisters, anyone that's trying with me, I'm not quoting like for like, I'm just trying to discuss the ideas and concepts here. It goes along the lines, basically, of those people who claim to be Jews but are not, right? Because they're essentially, what he's stating is they're committing sin, and they're going against the teachings of the Torah, of the Holy Great Torah. They are of the synagogue of Satan. These are very emotive words, synagogue of Satan. People don't like people using these words, and I understand why. But that's what it says in the Gospels. That's what it says in the Revelation story, and it explains that. So then we have to understand, well, if there's a synagogue of Satan, then who are the righteous Jews? And where are they? And why are they not being represented in mainstream media? Why is Rabbi David Yisraeli Weiss and the other rabbis, excuse me if I get people's names pronounced wrong around here, and the other guys, why are they not on the mainstream news when they're explaining that there should be no war in the Holy Land? Because having a state of Israel in the context of a formal state goes against the Great Torah. Yeah, mic drop moment really for people that really comprehend that.
Well, it is. That's a big thing. It's a massive thing.
Yeah. And the true Torah Jews on X or Twitter, as it was known, have a look at true Torah Jews on there. Okay, and as rabbis explained to you, there are football stadiums full of rabbis. They explained that when the Zionists wrote to the Global Rabbinical Institute back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, to say that they wanted to form the state of Israel and they wanted the blessing of the rabbis, the World Institute of Rabbis, the holy top order, said approval denied. It goes against the Great Torah. And I think somewhere I've posted a video, and I'll send you the video so you can share it, of where they do. And he explains that with the paperwork. So then if we're talking about these religions, what are they? There's lots of religions, because you could almost argue for every individual on the planet, there's a religion. Because even each person's interpretation of the great text differs a little bit. How they choose to actually live their lives and apply it may differ a little bit. So, you can argue that. So, what we see are groupings and commonalities. And then where people decide to do things differently, you get splinter groups. There was the root core aspects, and then from there you've got other bits come off, Protestant, Catholic, whatever, and Sufi, Sunni, all the different things, Shiite, all the different aspects of Islam, and all the others. I won't go through all of them, but people get it. So there are different religions because everyone has a right to express themselves. Everyone has a right to worship, express, celebrate this life and the creator and the experience however they want to do so. And so each person will do so. If they're a dancer, they'll dance. If they're a singer, they'll sing. If they're a painter, they'll paint. Whatever it is, they're a farmer, they'll farm. Right? And they'll do that. So you're going to get a different expression. So you're always going to get lots of different ones. And I think the beauty is the diversity and and the greatness in the architecture is the simplicity of its unity. But we are all one at the end of the day, but it doesn't mean that we should be homogenized. Otherwise, the creator would have just created us like stormtroopers, but he hasn't.
And therefore, then, because I like the fact that you just said, so we are, express yourself as you want to in this life experience, but we are all one. So, what, just in case this crashes in a minute, we'll come back on, because I haven't gone on my Zoom Pro for some reason. It's just gone on like a 40-minute thing. So if it crashes, okay, I'll come back on. So you just said, yeah, we express ourselves individually, which is wonderful, diverse, wonderful, but we are all one. What does that mean to you? We are all one. How can we all be one if we're all different? We're all fighting, or we're not all fighting, but not all the time.
The illusion of separation is there because the ego kicks in, right? To have a sort of that, you're always going to have that aspect in us, which is that primal being, which is geared for survival, right? And then the sort of higher consciousness aspect, which is the higher consciousness aspect, which is our conscience. I mean, that's part of the duality of, you need to be a little bit selfish to survive. Hence, they tell you to put your mask on first in the aeroplane, because if you're suffocating trying to help someone else, you're not going to help anyone, are you? So, so you've got to make sure there's enough in you to sustain yourself and do what you need to do and potentially want to do. And then from there, be able to move out and help other people. So that's always going to be a struggle. There's always going to be that between people. That's part of this experience.
You can make it. Cool. So sorry about that. Hopefully I join them together and people won't notice that you're on a walkabout. Are you making a cup of tea?
I'll go into the room.
I'll have a peppermint, please. But, so you ended then saying at the end of the day we are all one, because my question was like, if we're having this diverse experience, etc., all being different, which is great, expressing ourselves in this human form, but ultimately we are all one. What does that mean? We're all one?
We're all one humanity, we're one species, we're all generally speaking.
There's nothing hidden in this comment that you just said.
Well, that we're all one.
Yeah.
No, hidden in the context of.
Hidden as in like we are all connected at a deeper level.
It's a deeper level, then we're all connected to the same species in humanity. I mean, obviously at a soul level or at an energetic level, we are all part of one massive amorphous energy blob in infinite consciousness, depending, there's different ways that people look at it, whether they're looking at it from a scientific perspective and viewpoint or from a spiritual one. But ultimately, the thought process there is that we're all drops of the same ocean. So if all of consciousness and everything that exists is one huge infinite amorphous energy blob, then we're little drops of that. And we're going through the experience with an abundance of resource and everything that we need. Then it just comes down to whether or not we're capable of controlling our primal instincts and our vices and our desires in order to have a balanced experience and journey through this, I don't know, with simulation or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
Or divine creation or whatever people want to call it. So on that basis, we're all part of that. There's we all feel love generally. We all feel grief. We all go through these emotions and experiences. It's not unique to any of us. It always feels unique when we're the ones going through the pain, like we're the only ones going through it. But, we understand that everyone goes through it at some point in their lives, no matter how much money they've got or haven't got. They don't get away from the human condition. The ego still kicks in, the lust kicks in, all the rest of it, greed, envy, whatever. So, while we go through these different ages, the costumes change and the props change and the hairstyles change, but the underlying drivers don't change. Right? 500,000 years ago, when one male saw another male looking at his female, a fight ensued. The same thing happens today, and the same happens tomorrow. And wars have been started over such, and less. So that's part of our journey through this experience. But at this level, it's duality. You know, I could go through. We haven't got necessarily a whiteboard, but it might be interesting to do a talk on the trivium and quadrivium, because that goes through how the material universe is. I mean, we touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of how the material universe is made of 4 modes of number, and we experience it with our 5 senses, and then we communicate it with the 3 tiers of language. And that 3, 4, 5 is a Pythagoras. True origin of the Pythagoras triangle is that description and origin. And then from there, that's also the cornerstone to the golden ratio, and everything else hangs off that. And that's the blueprint to the material universe, as Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, and the other thinkers of the past, and actually everyone up until around the 1600s was educated that way. And then it changed.
Then it changed. So we're here having this human experience. I mean, why are we going through this, and what is the point? And I'll leave that one first. I have many questions, but big ones.
Well, that one. So I think firstly, for me, this dimension is a challenge, is a test bed, and it's a test bed for each part of the soul. I mean, why does it need a test bed? Why does it need somewhere to have an experience? I was listening to, I think it was Rabbi Simon Jacobs. I'm not Jewish or Islamic or Christian or anything, just for the record, in case people are thinking I should have said at the beginning. I was born to a Sikh family, so I'm Sikh ultimately, and it's a long beard, long hair. But I have interest. I love all of the faiths, to be honest, because for me, they're all expressing desire and celebration of the same infinite creative being. So, but in this instance, I was listening to Rabbi Simon Jacobson on YouTube, and he said, look, and there's a couple of rabbis have come up with, if you're the ultimate creator of everything, there's no peer, there's no superior, there's not. What is it that you have a lack of? And his view was that in that situation, you have no peer, you have no companionship. And if all of us were created to love the creator by default, it would have created a load of cloned robots and would not have really experienced love. Because to experience love, you have to experience rejection. This creates a very interesting paradigm on Earth. Because if we've been put here, if you take that as a concept, then it's an interesting, and I think it's quite a beautiful one, because those who are rejecting the Lord or the Creator are equally as important to the Creator as those who are loving. Because the Creator, what is the love anyway? If you're infinite love and consciousness, what difference does it make if we're loving Him? There's no difference to it, potentially, right? Apart from the fact that it gets to feel and experience that, and also the rejection. So, you know, like I've said in the past, that for me, the Kabbalah and the deep state, we want them to be as formidable as they can possibly be, because they are a test of our conviction, the rest of us, of whether or not we've got that conviction and love to be able to defeat the most formidable opponent that's ever existed. You know, rather than it just being an easy game, it becomes a serious labor of love in that. So, yeah, so why are we here? I mean, that's one paradigm why we're here. Even in the Vedic scriptures, they describe it as a test for our soul. You know, can we truly recognize our inner selves, even with all this distraction and illusion, Maya, as they call it, that's going on? So there's different ways of looking at it, but I do definitely see it as a test bed or an experience zone. And I don't think, and while the frequencies go up and down as they're described through the 4 ages of light, of absolute truth, then the second age, third age, and the age of darkness, which is kind of where we are coming out of now. People know about that sort of Pisces to Aquarius type stuff. At this point, you have the greatest contrast, because in the dark ages, the darkness, as we're seeing around us, some of the activities that the elites and stuff are getting up to is pretty nefarious and quite dark and satanical. That darkness has to be dispelled with the greatest light. So you get the greatest contrast at this point. And therefore they think it's the greatest time to be alive, because it's only those that have the greatest conviction also that stand up early and see it through. So there's lots of ways of looking at it, but I don't believe it ever gets to a point where it all gets pink and fluffy and the unicorns and rainbows come out and everything's happily ever after. Because personally, I think that would be really boring. I'm not in that space. I'd rather not be here for that. I'd rather you just send me down when there's a bit of fun to be had. But I'm sure that but it's part of the experience. So there'd be new lessons for the soul to learn in that environment as well, no doubt.
So therefore,
Yeah,
then, in that case, and I get that totally. When people talk about, oh, so it's the best time to be alive because the world is changing, humanity is changing, we're ascending as a race. What are your thoughts on that? If we're not going to be, opening our doors to being fluffy pink things and unicorns and rainbows, if that isn't our ascension process, where are we ascending to if we are? What is this new paradigm that's around the corner?
well, the new paradigm around the corner for everyone is death. It's usually about 70 odd years away from wherever they are at the moment. I think probably comfortably. That's the end of the paradigm for the experience in that context. For the infinite experience, then it's emerging back with the infinite love and consciousness. I would assume. I'm not saying I know that as a fact because it's not something, unless anyone can know as a fact. I'm not claiming to have cracked that. It's not possible to crack that creation.
No.
But but trying to use some sort of logic is all I can do. Is that if it is infinite love and consciousness, then that which is infinite in us will merge back with the infinite, and that which is material will merge back with the matter. Right? Because even in physics, we're told that energy and matter cannot be destroyed; it can only be transformed, transposed, transmuted. Right? Physics, GCSE physics. That's not any particular mystical
basic knowledge. Yeah.
On that basis, that would be my assumption.
But so are we not going through some really challenging times at the moment for humanity? When people have said, "Oh, humanity has never experienced this before." I mean, do we know that? Was there an Atlantis? Who knows? But because you hear the stories saying, "Oh, we're ascending," and I believe there is a big change, but it's not what I believe. It's just coming from you. What is this big change that is happening at this moment?
At the moment, we're going through. I believe we're going through a period where the electromagnetic frequencies of the Earth are changing. I don't necessarily know exactly why, but it could be a combination of our consciousness and the celestial objects, and maybe those two work yin and yang a little bit more than we think they do. And using the tides of the oceans and the tides of the sacred feminine as two examples of that. That we're getting into, we're coming out of the darker space and into the lighter space. The Vedic scriptures say that. Other scriptures, Revelation explains we're going to end times eschatology. Eschatology study will also sort of point to that. So lots of factors are pointing to the fact that lots of change happens. Look, the seasons change, so there's no reason why the ages shouldn't change as well. And so we're in that space now, and everything is certainly going into that space.
But we don't know what's around that corner, which it'll be boring if we did, I guess.
No, what's around that corner is for us to determine individually for ourselves how I handle whatever happens next is going to become my reality. How each person handles whatever happens next will become their reality. Some people will reject a utopian Earth potentially in which they've had what they believe was more value out the current paradigm. And it's not, so it'll carry on. The world will carry on. The important thing for me is, it doesn't matter where we're at. You need to enjoy the experience, fight to remain sovereign and free so you can enjoy it based on your free will and other people aren't telling you what to eat, drink, smoke, inject, whatever. So that you can just operate from your free will and your conscience. That is ultimately, I think.
And you mentioned the yin yang, which is a balance, because you can't have dark without light. You can't have, fear without love. You can't have all these opposites. And that, I guess, is us recognize a shadow in ourselves. Yeah. Because if we didn't have a shadow, if we were all love and light, there wouldn't be any dark. So we have to have that yin yang. So there's always going to be a dark side. Do you think?
Definitely, there has to be. Otherwise, what would it be? I mean, it'd be blinding if you just was all light and no dark.
It'd be boring as well, really, wouldn't it?
100% boring, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's getting stuck in the duality of light and dark. The balance point in the middle, really, that we're looking for. So yeah, absolutely. That's part of the experience. The creator has created both the light and the dark. So how can you be followers and lovers of the creator and then reject half of the creation? It doesn't make sense to you.
Does this, do you think, go back to the very basics of Adam and Eve? When she sort of coerced him into eating the apple, and then he saw things in a different light. I mean, if he hadn't eaten the apple, which obviously is symbolic for us, it's all about a choice. Then would we all be, you know, singing Ging Gang Googly and sitting around the fire holding hands? Do you think that's anything to do with it? Is that symbolic? The apple, Adam and Eve?
Well, I mean, there's lots of good explanations and interpretations of the apple in terms of an Adam not eating it. You know, in terms of temptation, Eve, and all the rest of it. I think there's a lot more of an alchemical understanding behind that, and that's probably one for another day. Sacred masculine, sacred feminine, and the dynamic between them in creation. Manly P. Hall, 33rd degree Freemason, Grandmaster of the American Lodges, and that does some really good talks on YouTube discussing that. Obviously not all Freemasons are dark Masons, and those Masons providing explanation and interpretation of occulted knowledge. Actually, that's a good point. I wanted to just talk about that word occult.
Yeah.
Because occult means hidden. But a lot of the time, I think that we look at that as though it's been hidden by secret societies, or it's been hidden by mystery schools. But if you look at it, it's actually the occult is that which is hidden by the creator, because you have to experience it. It's not something necessarily hidden by man. It's been hidden by creator in the first place. So with the occult stuff, your eyes, ears, nose, you know, sense of touch, sense of taste, those things can't pick up the occult because it's hidden from the material. You're going into an immaterial realm, subconscious realm, in order to experience that. And I suppose the thing you could experience, there's love. Right, there's an overarching experience of love and feeling and euphoria that you get, which you can't see that necessarily in its complete. You can see symptoms of that feeling, but you don't see the complete emotion, because an emotion is not material in that context. You know, it has a connection to the way that our chemicals and that work, but it's very hard to describe it. You can describe something material. It's dark, it's hard, it's black, it's smooth, it's wet. You try and say, if I said to describe anxiety, you know, you have to think, okay, how am I going to, I've got to try and use parables and examples and metaphors. I can't just say it's X, Y, and Z, because words were never designed to describe the metaphysical or the immaterial. Words were only ever designed to describe the material. And that's a trivium quadrivium thing for another talk, probably.
Yeah, there's loads. I mean, yeah, just, and not about this, what about that? There's so much. Okay, so just to wind up then, going back to, is religion man-made or God's creation? Give me a yay or a nay.
Well, based on the fact that God created faith and it was and man created religion, where faith is the true natural law, love-based message, and religion is the dogmatic, exclusive, my way or the highway approach to the natural law schools of faith. So yeah, I made the distinction between faith and religion and say, yeah, in that context, then religion was man-made and faith is of God.
Yeah.
All of the oneness. Yeah.
And then again, you know, if you didn't have these wars, would we not be living in the duality? Do we have to have these wars? Is it necessary? Are they man-made? Because quite often it's about land or religion, isn't it? I think the two wars that are going on at the moment, no, one's land-based, or the two big wars. I'm sure there's wars that we don't even know about. But, you know, when you talk about Israel and Palestine, is that land-based? Is that religious-based that we're told? Or is there something going on behind the scenes? Again, big topic. And the same with Ukraine and Russia. If we didn't have these disagreements and these wars, would the world be a happy place and boring? Or do we need these manufactured disagreements?
You wouldn't. I don't think well, these are particularly manufactured disagreements. I mean, that's a whole discussion around military-industrial complex and stuff like that. But but there's always going to be skirmishes. There's always going to be conflict. You can't take that out because that's just part of the psyche. Yeah, I don't believe you get to a point where there's none of that conflict and confrontation. Otherwise, what is there?
Yeah, there's no balance again. There's no yin yang.
No contention, then there's no balance. There's no exactly. It's built that way. Iron sharpens iron. So you
iron
need
sharpens iron. Cool. Yeah. Okay, and I think it's our perception. Like, so we just got to get through it, haven't we? Really, and see what's on the other side.
And enjoy it. That's the biggest thing. Doesn't matter high or low, happy or sad, you won today, you lost today. Try and be content, stay in ascending spirits all the time, meet any challenge, head on the best you can.
With a
And just
smile.
enjoy it. That's sort of the only thing I can think of doing. That's it.
Brilliant way to end.
That
Thank
fails vodka.
you. Yeah, great chatting to you. All right, I'll see you again soon somewhere along the line. So thank you very much for your time. And yeah, all the best and happy Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter.
Yeah, it is Easter, isn't it? Whatever that's all about.
Spring equinox. All right, cool.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye.